Welcome to Reddit Stories, where a supermarket Karen tries to play matchmaker and it doesn't end well for her. Random entitled mom demands I date her son. So I, 30 female, will try to keep this short, but sorry if I don't articulate myself well, as I'm still kinda confused by what just happened. I flew to England with my dad, who's 63, and my younger sister, who's 22, for my cousin's wedding. We've been bouncing between relatives' houses, running errands, and catching up with people we haven't seen in years. A few days ago, Dad, his old friend, and I went to the supermarket. I wandered into produce and ended up next to a guy picking out vegetables. We made small talk about which cucumbers looked less sad. It was friendly, light, maybe 2 minutes total. Then we said goodbye and went back to shopping. A couple of minutes later, someone tapped on my shoulder. It was his mother. She looked at me, then at her son, and said, in the most matter-of-fact tone, "Is this the girl you were talking to? Why didn't you ask her out?" I was stunned silent. He looked like he wanted to sink into the tile floor. He apologized immediately and said, "I'm so sorry. My mom's been really involved in my dating life right now." The way he emphasized "really" made me understand exactly what kind of situation this was. His mother ignored the apology and asked me directly if I was seeing anyone. I wasn't, but I panicked and said that I was. I even pulled out a photo of me and a male friend so she'd believe it. I figured a harmless lie was better than accidentally starring in some stranger's family soap opera. She frowned, the son apologized again, and I politely said I needed to keep shopping. I stepped away, but as I did, I felt my scarf get tugged, like she tried to stop me to keep the conversation going. I pulled it back on instinct. She lost her balance and fell sideways into a display of onions. The entire stand shifted, and onions rolled across the floor. I stood there frozen while her son was helping her up and apologizing to her and me at the same time. At that exact moment, my dad walked over. He took one look at the onions everywhere, me looking exhausted, and the son looking like all the blood had left his face. I started explaining what happened, but the mother jumped in and said I was being rude and dismissive to her son. Dad looked at me, I explained the situation, and he laughed. Not a small laugh, but a full, "I've lived a long life and this is too absurd not to laugh" type of laugh. Then he called his friend over and he started laughing too. The son just quietly said, "Mom, let's go," which was probably the most dignity-saving move available to them at the time. The store manager came over, heard the quick version, and told us not to worry and to have a good day. We paid and we left. My sister, upon hearing the story later, said if someone ever tries to matchmake her with a stranger at a grocery store, she's simply going to pretend she's studying to become a monk. Honestly, I don't think the situation was funny at the time, but watching my dad laugh like that made the tension break. Sometimes life is just strange, and sometimes onions get involved somehow. That was some Olympic-level unwanted matchmaking. I feel so bad for her son. I'm sorry you got dragged into someone's family drama in the vegetable aisle. That's such a bizarre thing to experience. Your dad laughing is honestly the funniest part. Sometimes absurd situations deserve laughter. I hope the son eventually gets to make his own dating choices without a chaperone. So this mom really tried to schedule a whole relationship in the produce aisle. She really said cucumbers and commitment. The son was just praying that the floor would open up. And the onions were like, "Girl, we did not ask to be part of this." My friend's girlfriend hates me after discovering our shared nickname for her. When I first met my friend, Nate, I thought he always seemed like his brain was running 3 tabs open at once, but he was easy to talk to. He was a PhD student teaching part-time in my department. I was finishing my degree and needed help with my dissertation. He gave a guest lecture that connected almost exactly to what I was researching. I stayed to talk after class, and we realized we had overlapping academic interests. From there, we started meeting up for coffee to go over my drafts. I had a crush on him when we first met, I'll admit that. But our university had strict rules about staff dating students due to some problems in the past. We both understood that rule and didn't even joke around it. We talked about work, theory, and occasionally complained about how university cafeterias somehow make potatoes taste depressing. We grew closer though, not romantically, Just that kind of easy friendship that builds when you spend hours around someone who understands the parts of your life that others don't. I finished my degree, time moved along, and we stayed in contact. One night, we kissed after a few drinks, but whatever spark I thought might have been there really wasn't. We both realized we were better as friends, and we never crossed that line again. In the time he was helping me with my dissertation, we developed a few weird inside jokes. One of them started because his parents were constantly pressuring him to settle down and get married. They were so pushy about it that I told him he should tell them he was already dating someone impossible, a vampire. It was a dumb joke, but it stuck. We gave her a dramatic name. Let's just say Veronica McVampire for the sake of this post. She had a personality, a backstory, the whole thing. We even once booked tickets to a small concert under the name Nate and Veronica Vampire as a joke. It was silly and harmless, just something we laughed about back then. We kept that joke going. Sometimes when he went on a date, I'd ask him how poor Veronica was handling the betrayal. He'd send pictures of simple dinners and caption them like it was a vampire feast. It was harmless and existed long before he met his current girlfriend, Kate. When he and Kate started dating, we kept using the nickname. Not in a mean way, more like referencing characters we created long before she ever existed in our lives. But Kate did happen to share some traits that matched the fictional vampire version. She worked night shifts at a hospital, so she slept odd hours. Her curtains were always drawn, and she liked quiet evenings inside. We didn't say anything unkind. We just kept using the name Veronica to refer to her in messages with each other. It was stupid, yes, but it didn't feel mean, and it didn't feel secret because we didn't think she would ever see the texts. It was just a habit. Then, one night, Nate called me and said he needed to talk. His voice sounded off. I assumed he needed to vent about family. I said I could meet him near campus since I had just left work. He told me not to come to his flat. Then I heard Kate's voice. She was crying and asking why I called her that. She had seen a notification from me earlier that mentioned Veronica. She didn't know the joke. She thought it was the name of another woman he had been seeing behind her back. When she confronted him, he told her it was an inside joke, and because she already knew we had kissed once a long time ago, she assumed that I was the other woman. To make it worse, Nate didn't explain it properly. He panicked, and instead of telling her that Veronica was a made-up character we had invented long before she existed, he made it sound like we just had a nickname for her. That looked bad, really bad. She demanded to see the texts and voice messages. She saw that Veronica really was her. She heard me ask about dinner plans with her. She saw how casually we used the name. To her, it sounded like we had been making fun of her behind her back. I tried to explain. I told her the nickname existed before we even knew her, that we never meant anything cruel or mocking. She didn't hear me. She just left. Nate wanted me to fix it. He asked me to talk to her and explain. I told him that showing up again would only make things worse. It already looked too personal. It already looked suspicious. I realized how different everything looked from her side. She was dating a man who had once had feelings for me. I was a younger woman who spent a lot of time with him. We kept a nickname going behind her back. Even if it wasn't mean, it was exclusionary. She was never given the context, so all she could see was that we shared something secret about her. Now she won't return his calls. She's staying with her family for a few days. And Nate is asking me to step in. I don't think I should. It feels like I'm already too involved. I regret continuing the joke. I regret not looping her in when she became serious to him. I regret not seeing how something harmless to us would land heavily for her. I want to do the right thing here, but I don't know what that is. The nickname itself wasn't malicious. The timing and secrecy were the problem. If you're in Kate's position, you already know your boyfriend used to have feelings for this other woman. You're trying to be chill. You don't want to be insecure. And then you find out they have a private language about you. That hurts. It doesn't matter that the joke came first. What matters is she never got invited into it when she was part of his life. Nate needs to take responsibility and repair this, not you. You two built a world where you were the main characters and everyone else was a supporting detail. That works until someone else actually matters. Nate is the one who has to rebuild trust, not you. Your job is one message saying there's nothing romantic on your side and you'll answer any questions that she wants. After that, you step back. Nate needs to show with actions that he's committed to her and able to form healthy boundaries. Update. The situation was worse than I understood. After my post, I talked to a mutual friend who had been speaking with Kate. She told me that Kate believed the nickname was just the surface of a much bigger problem. She thought that Nate had been emotionally entangled with me the entire relationship. I told her that wasn't true, but then Kate told me what Nate had told her. He had told her that the only reason we weren't together was because I didn't want him. Not because we didn't have chemistry, and not because we mutually agreed. He had painted himself as the one who had wanted something more and had been rejected. He had also dated multiple women in similar circumstances, always younger, always women still finding their footing in the same academic environment where he carried authority, girls who hadn't yet learned how to draw boundaries. Kate told me something else too. He had pressured her and some past girlfriends to dress and speak in ways that resembled me or another previous partner he had fixated on. He didn't tell them that's what he was doing. They only realized it later. It was subtle, but it was emotional pressure. He would guide them into acting like someone he already had feelings for, without telling them that person was real. She said she didn't want to be around him anymore. She said she didn't want either of us to be. She didn't want revenge or drama, only distance. I apologized to her properly, not with too many explanations. I didn't feel I owed her that as much as Nate did, but with responsibility. She accepted it, but we aren't suddenly close. That would be too much too soon. We arranged for me and another friend to pick up her things from his place while he was out. We left his keys on his table, then we texted him together and told him not to contact either of us. If he did, we'd report him to the university. He hasn't replied, at least not to me. I have since blocked his number. I don't think he's a monster. I think he's someone who has learned how to structure relationships around being admired. And when admiration shifts, he tries to mold the person back into what he needs them to be. I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be the person someone uses to make someone else feel insecure. I'll be more careful going forward about boundaries, inside jokes, private lingos, and about not blurring the line between friendship and something more, and not letting things get mixed up in ways that they shouldn't. It wasn't the nickname that caused all of this, it was his behavior. Nate has a habit of dating younger women and shaping them to fit what he wants. Your joke just ended up getting pulled into that. The best thing you can do is step back and let Kate have space to heal and be treated like her own person. You handled the second part correctly. You apologized directly, without defensiveness, and you removed yourself from the triangle. The rest belongs to him. This isn't about blame anymore. It's about recognizing that sometimes we contribute to harm without intending it and choosing to grow past that. So Nate's really out here running some sort of a romantic comedy instead of a relationship. And he's somehow surprised when reality doesn't want to cosplay for him. Turns out, people are actual people, not just characters in your head. Exactly. Date humans, not fan fiction. Am I the jerk? My sister says I made everyone else look bad after I quietly paid for a stranger's groceries. I was grabbing pasta sauce and cat litter after work. Small town chain store. Tuesday night, nothing dramatic. The guy ahead of me had maybe 12 items. Bread, milk, peanut butter, bananas, a tiny birthday cake, etc. He kept rearranging things on the belt and muttering sorry. The cashier rang everything up and it hit $48.23. He tried one card, declined. Tried another, declined again. The cashier was gentle. She told him they could take things off if he needed. She wasn't annoyed nor cold, just soft and steady. He touched the birthday cake and said quietly and almost to himself that he needed to keep that one. The cake was for his kid. He started removing things. Strawberries first, then the milk, then he picked the milk back up again like his hand changed its mind. I don't know what came over me. It wasn't a big thought process, just super simple. I told the cashier to ring his things together with mine. I said it low, not performing anything. He told me I didn't have to. I said it was all right and happy birthday to his kid. He didn't cry loudly, no breakdown, just a quiet shift in his breathing. The kind where someone is holding everything in because they have to. The cashier's eyes went watery. Mine did too. We needed a manager to override the register to combine the orders. I tapped my card. They bagged the groceries. He thanked me several times, but not in a dramatic way. Just a small, tired kind of gratitude. I walked out and drove home. I didn't take a picture, didn't post about it. I didn't say anything to anyone. I have social anxiety, and if anyone had made it into a spectacle, I would have melted into the floor. That was it. Took about 5 minutes and just a quiet thing for a stranger. I didn't even think about it again. But later, the cashier texted my sister. Turns out, the cashier and my sister know each other from school. She told my sister what happened because she thought it was sweet. My sister called me 2 hours later and she went off. She said I embarrassed the guy. Then she said I made the store look cruel. She said I was acting like a hero and that if I wanted to help, I should have given the money to a charity instead. She said paying in front of him was a performance, even though I barely spoke. I told her I didn't have cash, so I used the card that I had. I didn't draw attention, didn't cause a scene. I said I tried to be invisible. She kept going. She said I made the whole town look poor. She said now the store would expect customers to step in and that I set a precedent. She made it sound like I had committed some moral crime. This morning I stopped at the store again. The cashier left a note for me at customer service. The man had come back with his kid. The cake was a hit. The kid loved the blue frosting. They lit a little dinosaur-shaped candle. He wanted to thank me again. I told my sister about it and she doubled down, said that now he would remember being a charity case and that kindness only counts if the person never knows it came from you. I don't agree. I don't believe that. But now, a small moment that felt human and simple feels complicated and heavy. I don't regret helping him at all, but I'm realizing my sister can turn anything into something that makes you feel ashamed for caring. And that part sticks with me a little more than I want to admit. So I'm here wondering if I did something wrong. Not because I believe my sister is right, but because her voice is loud and mine doesn't always win in arguments like this. Am I the jerk for paying right there instead of trying to make it even more invisible or for helping at all? You did something good, not flashy or loud or performative, a quiet act of compassion in a moment where it mattered. There's nothing embarrassing about receiving help when you're struggling. Your sister is projecting something that has nothing to do with you. Some people get uncomfortable when kindness shows up because it reminds them of what they don't do. Don't let her rewrite what happened. You did the right thing. Your sister sounds like someone who gets triggered by other people doing something decent because she thinks even kindness is a competition. You were thoughtful and you did something small and human. There's nothing shameful in that. Some folks feel exposed when someone else shows kindness because it highlights how closed off they are. That's her problem, not yours. Keep being the person who notices a cake, a dad, and a blue candle. The world needs more of that. Imagine resenting kindness because you didn't think of it first. Some hearts stay small because they've never practiced opening. Am I the jerk for asking a neighbor if she wanted to share food? I'm a 31-year-old single guy who lives alone in an apartment complex, and I've been coasting for a bit when it comes to food. I can handle boiling pasta and heating things in a microwave, but that's the extent of my culinary skill. I used to work 2 part-time gigs, and when I lost one recently, I cut back on takeout. That left me rotating between cheap fast food and boxed macaroni. It was getting old. I felt sluggish all the time, and I could see the difference in the mirror. Across the hall diagonally from me lives a woman around my age. I'll call her Katie. She's lived here for about 2 years. We're not friends, we don't chat, but we exchange small acknowledgments when we pass each other. The kind of hallway politeness you get used to in apartment living. But she cooks often, and whatever she's making always smells good. Not jarred sauce or microwave dinners, but real meals. Sautéed garlic, baked chicken, simmering broth kind of meals. I had complimented the smell before in passing. She always thanked me quickly and locked her door. One evening, while eating another bowl of tired boxed mac, I got the idea that maybe I could offer her money to cook a little extra. Not a full catering situation, just one more portion of whatever she was already making. I figured she wouldn't have to change anything about her routine. I thought maybe it would be helpful for both of us. The next day I saw her in the hall when she was checking her mail. I mentioned that I really liked the way her cooking always smelled and asked if she might be open to cooking a bit extra each evening and either dropping it off or letting me pick it up. I said I would pay her weekly for it. She looked surprised. Then she said she was too busy and didn't have the time. She didn't look upset, just firm. I said no problem. But then I went home and I thought about it. She cooks every day. She must not have understood that I didn't mean for her to make special things or cook for hours. So a few days later, when I saw her again, I brought it up one more time. I also increased the amount that I offered, thinking maybe it wasn't enough before. This time, she looked uncomfortable. She said she didn't want to do that and that it felt like I was asking her to be a housekeeper. She said she wasn't interested in some arrangement where she had to answer to a neighbor she barely knew. She called me a stranger. She shut her door, and that was that. I stood there feeling embarrassed. I didn't mean anything weird by it. I wasn't trying to flirt with her or get free labor. I genuinely thought it made sense. She cooks, I can't. I pay her, we both benefit. But the way she responded made me feel like I crossed a line. Now I'm replaying it, wondering if I did something really out of line or creepy without even realizing it. So, am I the jerk? Dude, you asked and she said no. That was your cue to stop. When you asked again, that's when it crossed into boundary pushing. You weren't offering to share cooking. You were asking her to be responsible for your meals. That changes the dynamic from neighbor to employee, and that's extremely uncomfortable when there isn't friendship or trust there. It's not about whether she cooks anyway. It's about her not wanting to have someone depending on her every night. Also, calling yourself not creepy doesn't make something not creepy. The boundary crossing is the creepiness, not romantic interest. There is no adult reason to avoid learning how to cook. You're a full-grown human being. You're going to have to feed yourself for the rest of your life. You don't need to become a gourmet chef. Learn 5 basic meals. YouTube is free. You come off like someone trying to outsource being an adult. That's why she reacted the way she did. Update. I apologized to Katie. It was short. I told her I didn't realize how uncomfortable my request was and that I should have respected her no the first time. She nodded and said thank you. That was it. No long emotional conversation, just acknowledgement. We still see each other in the halls and say hello. It feels normal again and there's no tension. My older neighbor down the hall got a tray of homemade fudge from her this past weekend. I didn't get any. And honestly, I get it. I earned that one. As for me, I started watching a few basic cooking videos online. I'm learning slow, but I can now roast vegetables, cook rice without burning it, and even made a decent chicken noodle soup. Turns out, feeding yourself is possible. It just takes practice. So yeah, I was the jerk. But I learned something from it. This is actually a genuinely good resolution. You apologized without expecting emotional labor from her. You respected her boundary, and you learned to cook. That's growth. Glad it turned out calm. My man saw a home-cooked meal and said, "What if I subscribe?" "Sir, this is an apartment, not HelloFresh." She said no politely the first time. And he said, "Okay, but what if I ask weirder?" Am I the jerk for excluding my adopted sister from family photos? I'm 26 female, and my adopted sister, Allie, is 14. The way we are related is that my younger brother, Michael, who's 24, has been with his wife, Maya, who's 24, since their freshman year of high school. Maya and Allie had a really bad home life, and my mom is very much a "my home is open to everyone" type of person. So over that year, Maya began spending more and more time at our house, eventually bringing Allie over as well since she was always babysitting. By the time Michael and Maya were 16 years old, Maya basically lived in the guest room, and Allie spent after school, most weekends, holidays, and summer vacations at our house. My mom and dad say that they both love Maya and Allie like their own kids. My other siblings, 18 male and 16 female, also treat her like she's part of the family. Even after Maya and Michael moved out, Allie is still at their house the same amount, if not more than she was before. Now to preface, I have nothing against Allie. She's a good kid, and I make an effort to be nice to her. However, I've never really liked how she was foisted into our lives. She's not actually adopted, and she still has parents and her own family. Yet my parents spend so much time and resources on her. It's ridiculous. Everyone else has started unironically calling her their daughter or sister, and I've refused. I just don't consider her to be family. Anyways, I got married recently, which is where the issue starts. I invited Allie to the wedding, of course, and she came with all of my other family. When we were doing pictures of the wedding parties, I decided that I wanted one with all of my immediate family, so my parents, my siblings, and Maya and Michael's daughter. My mom brought Allie up to come take the picture with us, and I was forced to tell her no. My mom started to get upset, but then Allie said it was okay and sat down by herself. My mom isn't a very confrontational person, so she didn't make a big deal out of it, but then everyone else realized that Allie wasn't there and they all got mad as well. Ultimately, we took the photo how I wanted it because they didn't want to do this at my wedding, but my entire family is upset with me now. My mom said that Allie cried when she got home because I don't love her, which I don't. I feel like they forced me into a position where I had to do a jerk thing by forcing her onto me. I don't think I should have to consider her family if I don't want to. Am I the jerk? Edit. After the ceremony, but before the reception, the wedding party and both of our close families took photos. I did not include Allie in this photo session, and she sat with the rest of the regular guests waiting for dinner. I did not intentionally exclude her from any of the photos taken. I'm sure she's in some of them from throughout the night, especially because she was there with my family. I hope that clears some things up. Edit 2. Maya and Allie are sisters. Sorry, forgot to explicitly say that in my post. Final edit. The people who are agreeing with me are starting to convince me that I'm wrong. To the people calling my parents nasty things in my PMs, or just saying that they aren't good people, you're dead wrong. My mom is the most caring and kind-hearted woman in the world, and I should have made that more clear in my post. To be clear, I am also not a monster. I don't mistreat Allie. I get her birthday and Christmas gifts every year. However, I'm starting to understand that I did do a crappy thing by publicly excluding her at my wedding because I wanted it to be exactly how I imagined, especially because my mom was apparently blindsided by my feelings. I was 16 to 18 when Allie started coming around a lot, and I didn't form the same bond everyone else did. I never really liked being around kids, including my sister, who by all accounts behaved way worse than Allie ever did. But I recognize that she's become a part of our family, and I think I'm going to make more of an effort to get to know her properly because I do know she is very mature and intelligent for her age. I'm so sorry, but you're the jerk. Unless my math is failing me, this kid entered your life when you were 16 and she was about 4, and you already had 3 other biological siblings who were younger than you, but older than her. Your words sound resentful, as if you started being neglected at that time. But you're taking this out on Allie. I hope you understand that, and perhaps therapy could help. You're the jerk because you were a jerk to Allie at your wedding. You could have gotten your immediate family photos in a much nicer fashion. Edit 2. I know Allie is not adopted. I know she's not OP's family. I know that Maya is really Allie's sister. I know that OP has every right to exclude whoever she feels like on her wedding day. I know she owes Allie nothing. I still think she's a jerk for the way she behaved. I'm not sure why everybody wants to change my mind about that. You're the jerk. You said this girl has been living with you and your family for 8 of her 14 years, more than half of her life, and basically a third of yours. That's a long time. On top of that, you let her sister in the picture. You say that you wanted a picture with your immediate family, but included Maya, the girl's sister, and Maya's daughter, the girl's niece, who, despite being the spouse and child of your brother, would not be considered immediate family. You basically included every important person in this girl's life in this picture, but not her. I'm normally very much on the side of it's your wedding, it's your call, but this seems like you're being unnecessarily cruel to her. Against the grain, but no jerks here. Judging by the ages, you were practically out of the house when Allie became a factor in your family's lives. It does seem like you didn't have a choice to develop the same relationship with her as the rest of the family. She is family to them, she's not family to you. That's not really anyone's fault, but kinda how the circumstances came out. You have no official relationship and no personal relationship. While you could have taken the extra photograph to keep the peace the day of, the fact is, you would have felt weird including someone neither you nor your fiancé consider family in a photograph, and likely preferred the photograph without her as is. There might actually be a slight jerk to the parents. If they want you to accept Allie as a sister, what have they actually done to build a relationship between you guys? It kinda seems like they expected you to just have one, and it doesn't work like that with older kids. We actually see a lot of that in this sub. With step and half siblings, this is really the same scenario. OP just has no personal relationship to Allie, so it makes sense OP would feel weird about a stranger to her being in the wedding photos. Karen loses it when I tell her that she's ungrateful for getting to be a stay-at-home mom and expecting her husband to do more chores. The other day, I went to lunch with 4 mom friends of mine. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and so is one of the other moms. Of the other 3, one works part-time and the other 2 work full-time. One of the moms that works full-time mentioned how she had started to pay for a cleaner to come by every other week. They both work full-time and have 2 kids and were finding that they couldn't keep up with all the chores. The other stay-at-home mom was agreeing with her about finding it difficult to keep the house clean when her husband does only a few chores inside the house. She told us her husband's main jobs are cooking dinner, cleaning the bathrooms, and looking after the yard. In my opinion, that's more than a fair distribution of chores, considering her husband works full-time. They have one kid who's 10 and no pets. I mentioned to her that it actually sounded pretty fair, and that my husband has 0 cleaning chores and mostly only cooks on the weekends if he wants to. I told her as he works full-time to provide for our family, I consider it my job to do the majority of the household chores. This isn't gender-related in my opinion. If we both worked, I would agree about splitting chores equally, or if I worked and he didn't, I would be expecting him to do the majority of the housework. I have 5 kids. The youngest 2 aren't in school, and I'm a carer for my husband's grandmother, yet it's still easy for me to set aside a couple hours a day for household chores. She strongly disagreed with me, and she thinks her husband should be doing more, and told me couples should split housework equally. I told her that I think she's being ungrateful to her husband, who allows her to be a stay-at-home mom even now that their kid is older. I asked her what she does all day if she expects him to do half the chores and that she just wants an excuse to be lazy. In the end, lunch was ruined and she called me a jerk. 2 of our friends took her side, telling me off for judging her. Was I the jerk here? I feel like I was pointing out the obvious. Your friends took her side and said that you were judging her? You were judging her. Both of you stay-at-home moms have individual arrangements with your husbands that more or less work for each of you. Yours seems to mesh quite nicely with your personal values about how work should be split up between you and your husband. But rather than accepting that hers is different and that it may work for her, you compared yourself to her and conveyed your own moral superiority by calling her ungrateful. You're the jerk. But the friend was complaining that it was difficult for her to keep the house clean, given that her husband does so few chores. People vent. Sure, you can disagree with people's opinions, but the way OP comes off sounds like a bit much. There are nicer ways to say things, or you can just shut up if you don't have anything nice to say. I mean, I don't know the friend, but her husband might be a complete slob that leaves a trail of mess wherever he goes, and cleaning after him might actually be a full-time job. Maybe her one kid is a handful in comparison to OP's kids. We don't know the full picture. Instead of being, look, I'm doing more, so you shouldn't complain, maybe she could have found out why her friend was struggling. If OP is such a good stay-at-home mom, maybe her friend could use some tips to keep a tidy home or be more efficient. Show a bit of empathy and concern rather than judgment and criticism. Someone told me something really disturbing about my girlfriend and I don't know how to proceed. I, 22 male, and my girlfriend, 22 female, have been dating for almost 1.5 years now. We love each other. She has a guy best friend who's 22, and for the last 8 months, I've had a feeling that he likes her and makes moves on her, even though he knows she has a boyfriend. Over the last 2 months, I became sure of it because of the things that he does. I confronted my girlfriend about this and told her that her best friend likes her and she should stay away from him. She says I'm delusional and making things up and there's no way that's possible and that they're just really close friends, etc. After going through a few more incidents, I couldn't stand it anymore and I told her to talk to him or I would talk to him and it might not end with just a talk. She said okay and talked to him. The best friend came to me to apologize and when I told him the things he had done, he just said that's how he acts towards his friends and that I was making it up in my head. He apologized a few times, but I didn't get the feeling that he was really sorry from our talk. Then he went on to talk to my girlfriend, telling her that I would keep finding ways to blame him, that I was delusional, and if she wanted to, they could stop being friends. My girlfriend said no, and they cried together. After that, she gave me the cold shoulder for 2 days. She also told me, I will not tell you what happens at my meetings with my friends anymore. And when I asked why, she said, that's the best solution for you to not get upset about anything my friends do. I was really heartbroken, but she didn't care. She kept saying she was more sad because I talked to her best friend too harshly. I didn't press the issue because we had exams in 2 days and we both needed to study. Today, after our exams were over, she had to go to her family because of an emergency, so we couldn't talk. But today, some random guy from our school asked me if I had broken up with my girlfriend. I said no, why? He said he saw my girlfriend holding hands and sitting closely with a guy at a cafe a few months ago and thought we might have broken up. I asked him if he was sure, and he said yes. To confirm, I showed him a photo of my girlfriend, and he said, yeah, I know what she looks like. Then I felt like I should show him a photo of the best friend too, so I did, and he said, yeah, that's the guy. I'm really lost and I don't know what to do. I can't talk to her about it because she has so much on her plate with her family emergency and she's away with her family. I don't want to add to her problems right now, so I'm pretending to be okay in our texts. I do feel terrible, and I've been staring at a blank wall and drinking for the last 2 hours. I really don't know what to do. She has a lot on her plate? Well, it seems she doesn't mind putting more on it. Don't even bother with that. You're the second choice. Besties are forever, even if they bring you down. That's the logic for this type of person. Stopped reading at guy best friend. Leave that stuff in high school, man. Have some self-respect and dump her. I can't give students a 0 for using AI unless I have proof? No problem. As a high school English teacher, I have 2 major annoyances when it comes to students completing assignments. First, many students don't read or listen to directions. I write the instructions on their papers and I read them out loud, but without fail, I still get students asking, "What are we doing?" It's not a huge deal, just one of those typical teacher frustrations. The real issue that gets under my skin, though, is students cheating on writing assignments by using ChatGPT. I can usually spot AI-generated essays, but when I confront students about it, they deny it and act outraged that I would even accuse them. It's frustrating because we both know they're playing dumb, but I'm left with little recourse. I usually just give them a 0 and move on, but there's always that fear in the back of my mind that one of them might complain to administration. If they did, I'm not confident that admin would back me up, especially since proving something is AI-generated can be tricky, and nowadays, higher-ups often side with the student. So I came up with a plan. I assigned an open-ended creative writing piece where the directions simply said to write a story about anything you want. Afterwards, students would ask a few questions about their story. The twist? I knew that if you ask ChatGPT to tell a story, it often spits out the same one about a girl named Elara who lives in the woods. The story usually starts with, "Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, there lived a young woman named Elara. She was known throughout the village for her curiosity and sense of adventure, always eager to explore the world beyond the familiar paths of her home." So, in slightly smaller print under the instructions, I added, "If your main character's name is Elara, minus 99 points. Sure enough, a couple of students turned in stories about a girl named Elara who lives in the woods. When I handed back their papers with a grade of 1 out of 100, because I find that it stings a bit more than a 0, they predictably asked why. All I had to do was point to the instructions they hadn't bothered to read. There was no need to mention AI. We both knew what happened. Am I the jerk for going to prom with my friend instead of my boyfriend? So I, 17 female, got into a long-distance relationship with my boyfriend, who's 19, over the summer. He lives in Italy and I live in America. He's a very stoic person and doesn't really get excited easily, which is why this situation surprised me so much. For some context, in the middle of my junior year of high school, I transferred to online school because I was dealing with severe mental health issues, and I knew staying there wasn't helping. Fortunately, my school is a charter school with an entire online branch, allowing students to switch if needed. Naturally, I started my senior year online as well. During this time, I met a boy who's 17 in my government class. He noticed the K-pop posters on my wall behind me during a virtual class session and asked about them. Gradually, we started partnering up on assignments, and eventually we became friends. Later, I met him in person when I went back to school for senior photos. We talked more, officially became friends, and exchanged social media handles when we met again for the SATs. A while later, he messaged me and asked if I was going to prom. I told him no because, at that point, I didn't see a reason to go since most of my close friends had either graduated or transferred to other schools. After talking about it more, I reconsidered and decided to go since I'd made new friends. Then he asked me to be his prom date. I knew right away there was no hidden agenda behind his request. He had a crush on someone else, and he knew I had a boyfriend because I often talked about him in class and in a group chat with other online students. So I said yes, and that was that. Thinking my boyfriend would be fine with it, given the circumstances, I decided to tell him everything. I sent him a detailed voice message explaining the situation. A few minutes later, he messaged me back with, "Why would you even think to ask me this? You basically just asked me to let you cheat." This confused me because I had explained everything thoroughly. I told him that my friend and I were only going as friends and that we had no romantic feelings towards each other. When I asked him why he felt that way, he said he didn't want another guy seeing me all dressed up for him. His response surprised me even more. I thought it was a given that this wasn't about dressing up for my friend, but just enjoying a high school event. We ended up arguing, and in the end, my boyfriend gave me an ultimatum. He told me to cancel my plans or he would break up with me. Now I have to tell my friend that my boyfriend doesn't want us going together, which is going to be difficult because I'd already agreed to go. Part of me wonders if I'm in the wrong, since this made my boyfriend react so strongly when he's usually pretty laid back. Maybe I shouldn't have said yes to going in the first place. I'm just not sure. The guy in Italy isn't your boyfriend if you've never even met him. Please get involved in the real world with real people. When breaking up with someone is as simple as not answering a text message or phone call, it's not a real relationship. Seriously, go to prom with a human being who's engaged in your real life. Don't worry about your imaginary friend. He doesn't sound like a decent person just because he pays attention to you. I think saying online relationships aren't real relationships is really disingenuous and just plain wrong. I met my husband online about 13 years ago on an online game, and we didn't get to meet up until later on. We're now married. Our relationship was real regardless of whether or not we were together physically. We lived on complete opposite sides of the country. Pick your real-world friend over the online relationship. Explain that the prom thing is not romantic, and if he doesn't accept that, then move on. Not the jerk. My fiancé expects me to pay off her debt to her parents before we get married. I, 43 male, proposed to my fiancé, who's 38, 3 weeks ago, and we're planning to get married next spring or summer. We've been together for about 2 years, and though we don't live together, we see each other 3 to 5 days a week. She has a teenage son who plans to go to university in a couple of years, and I have no kids. I currently take care of my mother, who has dementia, and I work remotely from her place to look after her. My fiancé owns a house with about $180,000 left on the mortgage, and she has an additional debt of $200,000 to her parents, which was used to offset her mortgage. She's also dealing with an ongoing lawsuit from last year. Her ex, not the father of her son, is suing her for $200,000, claiming that's the amount he invested in the house. A couple of months ago, my fiancé asked if I could pay off the $200,000 debt to her parents in a lump sum once we're married. This would mean using about 80% of my savings. I told her I'd rather pay off the mortgage first to avoid paying bank interest, but she disagreed. She's adamant about repaying her parents so they can enjoy the money while they're still alive, and I respect that. I mentioned that before making any payments towards the house, including the debt to her parents, I'd like to have my name on the deed. She agreed to this condition at the time. She says she's living paycheck to paycheck, and over the past year, I've loaned her $15,000 to help with bills. I know it's challenging for her, being a single mom with a house to maintain. She earns $90,000 per year, while I make $135,000. We had planned for me to move into her house next month, but with my mother's needs, I told my fiancé I'd continue to care for my mom at her home, working remotely there during the day while my fiancé and her son are at work and school. I'd then return to my fiancé's house afterward, hiring part-time help for my mother whenever I'm not available. My fiancé disagreed with this plan, but she agreed to me visiting my mother on Sundays and hiring someone to check on her 4 times a day, costing around $1,500 per month. Once I'm living with my fiancé, I offered to cover all her monthly bills, internet, gas, water, electricity, cell phones, and car insurance, but specified that I wouldn't pay toward the mortgage or debt unless my name was on the deed. She agreed. My request for ownership is partly due to her past experience with her ex. He contributed financially to the house, but had no documented ownership, which led to the current lawsuit. I want to avoid a similar situation in case things don't work out between us. A few nights ago, she brought up that her cousin recently called off her wedding because her fiancé didn't agree with how they had split their finances. She then asked me what my plans were for our finances. We had discussed this before, and I reiterated that I'd like us to share monthly expenses in a way that leaves each of us with an equal amount to spend or save after bills are paid. For example, if she has $2,000 left over each month, I'd also have $2,000 left over after paying bills. I suggested a shared bank account to make this easier, but she wants us to keep separate accounts with mutual access in case one of us kicks the bucket. When I explained my expense sharing idea, she became furious and insisted the man should pay for absolutely everything. I asked what would happen if I went broke and what she planned to do with her extra money. She said she'd cover the remaining bills if necessary, while the money she saved would be her icing on the cake for discretionary spending. She also mentioned I'd need to inform her about any significant purchases. I disagreed with this approach, as I'd prefer a more equal division of finances, but she views any sort of splitting as problematic. I suspect her cousin's recent breakup may have influenced her thinking. The next day, she texted me saying she wanted to break up because she intends to stick to her plan. How can I salvage this relationship so we can both agree on finances without straining ourselves financially? I already proposed a shared account for our paychecks, but she rejected that idea completely. Update. She did pay back $11,000 from the two loans of $5,000 and $6,000 about 5 months ago, and then borrowed $4,000 a month later to repair her leaking roof, which she still owes me. I found out about her ex's lawsuit nearly a year ago. Occasionally, I ask about the status, and she always says there are no updates from her lawyer. The last time I checked was a couple of months ago. Don't save this relationship. Read what you wrote. You don't say anything nice about your partner, just detailed how terrible they are with money and how they expect everyone around them to pay for stuff except for them. Lawsuit with an ex? And it sounds like you think the ex is getting done over. $200,000 to the parents, and I'm guessing they're getting close to retirement. She makes $90,000 a year and could potentially be almost $600K in debt depending on that lawsuit. Run. You have to take care of yourself. Didn't she already say she wants to break up? It's a massive red flag that she was sued by her ex. Was she the one to break things off? At this point, I would implore you to ask yourself, does she even like you, or does she just want your money? I'm not very confident on the former, but the latter is clear. Scream at me for 40 minutes on the phone? Enjoy getting investigated by the IT department for a data breach. When I was working for the local government, I was handling the phones at the service desk. We were about to finish for the day, coats on and ready to sign off. That's how close we were to 5 p.m. Then at 4:49, just 15 seconds before the phone lines closed, someone decided to call the service desk. Let's call her Jane. Jane was having issues logging into her mobile phone. I figured it would be a quick password reset, maybe a few minutes to fix, and then we'd be on our way. But oh boy, was I wrong. Right from the start, she made it clear she thought the issue was entirely my fault. She demanded to speak with the mobile tech who had already left for the day at 4 p.m., and somehow that was my fault too. Sensing where this was headed, I muted her while she was ranting and asked my manager if I could hang up since she was being rude. My manager, interested in what was happening, decided to listen in on the call from her desk. What followed was absolutely mind-blowing. For almost 30 minutes, Jane screamed at me, refusing any help and insisting the entire situation was my fault. I tried to suggest letting the mobile tech pick up her issue first thing in the morning, as I couldn't help her without her cooperation, but she didn't want to hear it, and the screaming continued. By this point, I'd already stayed 30 minutes past my shift and into overtime. I tried to win her with kindness, but that didn't work either. Eventually, after another 10 minutes of yelling, she agreed to let the mobile tech handle it in the morning. We finally hung up, and I just broke down. I was so angry, frustrated, and exhausted that I couldn't hold it in any longer. I was actually in tears. My manager was furious, not just about the call, but also that a colleague would speak to another colleague that way. The next morning, my manager brought in a box of chocolates for me as a kind gesture and immediately went to our department leader to file a complaint. A week later, I received a letter from Jane apologizing for her behavior. Then, suddenly, she was gone. There was no active directory profile for her anymore. She had been fired. As it turned out, Jane had been using another colleague's account for her mobile phone and was accessing files she had no business looking into. The colleague, who also shared the first name Jane, let's call her Jane B, worked in child protection. Jane A had somehow gotten hold of Jane B's username and password, allowing her to pass all security checks and access sensitive files she had no right to see. This was a massive GDPR breach. It all unraveled because she couldn't access Jane B's phone and decided to throw a fit at the one person who was patient enough to let her vent for 40 minutes. In the end, I received extra pay for those 40 minutes, a box of chocolates, and an apology. Meanwhile, Jane A ended up fired after getting herself investigated by IT for both how she talked to me and for violating serious data protection rules. The prank that made my friend's family move overnight and he never knew it was me. Picture this. It's the mid-90s and I'm a middle schooler who practically lives for pranking my friends. One Friday afternoon, I was hanging out with a couple of buddies. Let's call them Derek, Jamie, and Sam. We were riding bikes after school, just goofing around, when Derek mentioned he needed to stop by his place to feed the dog. I had recently read about a genius prank in Mad magazine, and suddenly I knew exactly what I wanted to try. The prank was simple but clever. You lift the toilet tank lid, position the fill hose line just right so it sprays water at the person who flushes. Since the water won't fill the tank, the float bulb won't rise, so the water keeps spraying until someone turns it off or fixes the hose. Foolproof, or so I thought. As we approached Derek's house, I put on my best desperate act. "Man, I really need to use the bathroom," I said, pretending to squirm. Derek said no problem, he just needed to let the dog out and get it fed and watered. Then he threw a wrench in my plans when he said, "To be honest, I need to go too." I panicked. If he went in before me, my prank would be ruined. Fortunately, he let me go first. I practically bolted upstairs, clutching myself for dramatic effect, and Derek pointed me down the hall to use the bathroom. Once inside, I lifted the toilet tank lid, positioned the hose just right, and closed it back up, envisioning the spray of water that would catch Derek by surprise. I went back downstairs, trying to look casual. A minute later, Derek ran up to use the restroom while the rest of us waited outside with our bikes. When he came back down like nothing happened, we all hopped on our bikes and headed to the park. I tried fishing for any sign that he had noticed the water. "Man, you took long enough," I joked. He just shrugged and said he let the dog out and went to the bathroom, with no mention of the water. Eventually, I forgot about it. We spent the day hanging out, and I even got to chat with a girl I had a massive crush on. Life was good. Then came Monday. During class, I noticed Derek looked a little out of it. After lunch, the PA system cackled, calling him to the office and announcing he'd be leaving for the day. He looked confused, gathered his stuff, and left. The whole class heard him grabbing things from his locker outside, but then he didn't come back the next day, or the day after that. In fact, he didn't come back at all. We were all baffled. Finally, Sam, who was pretty close to Derek, broke the news. Derek had moved away, just like that. My heart sank. Derek was one of my closest friends, and it made no sense. Sam explained that Derek's parents had been out of town that weekend, leaving him to look after the dog. Apparently, when Derek went to the bathroom, he flushed without noticing anything, and the prank went into full effect. The water kept spraying out all day Friday, then through Saturday and Sunday, flooding the entire bathroom. It eventually spread into the hallway and caused the ceiling to collapse into the living room. The main floor and basement ended up completely flooded. When Derek's parents came home on Monday, they found the disaster. The house, which had already been on the verge of being condemned, was now beyond repair. They had no choice but to pack up and move. The house was taken down shortly after. As Sam told me this, I felt my stomach drop, my face going pale as everything clicked. My harmless prank had destroyed their entire house and forced Derek and his family to leave. He had been a good friend to me, and I'd never intended for things to go this far. I never told anyone the truth, but every time I think about it, I feel a pang of guilt. I never saw Derek again. Karen is blaming me for what her dog ate. Now he might not survive. I was hosting a big garden party this weekend. I invited my entire friend group plus their partners. One of my friends takes her dog everywhere. I told her no pets were allowed. Although it was a garden party, we were in and out of my home, and I have 4 cats. My cats do not like dogs, and neither do I. Anyway, my friend showed up with her dog. I told her that her dog was not welcome in my home or my garden, and I asked her to please take her dog home or elsewhere. I thought my friend left. I went inside to sort out some things. I went into my garden about 15 minutes later, and my friend was standing there in my garden talking to our friends. She doesn't live that close, so I was confused. I went to ask her how she got back so quickly, and she told me she was just popping in and that she was going to go home since her dog isn't welcome. I asked her where her dog was, and she shrugged her shoulders and said that he was around. I went looking and found him at the bottom of the garden eating my crops and making a mess. I was angry and told my friend to get her dog off my property. A few hours later, she called me asking what my dog ate. I had no clue. My gardener plants and attends everything. I told her I didn't know, but I told her that he had made a huge mess, dug things up, and clearly eaten things. She shouted at me that her dog is sick and that I need to find out what the dog ate. I told her I had no idea, but I'd text the gardener to ask, but it was really her problem. I did send the text, but my gardener didn't answer. My friend called again, wanting to know what her dog ate, but I told her I still didn't know. She told me I obviously don't care if her dog makes it and called me a jerk. I still don't know what her dog ate, but apparently he's very sick and he might not make it. I feel bad, but I told her not to bring the dog onto my property, so I don't feel responsible like she says I am. Am I the jerk? ETA. After being unable to reach my gardener, I took pictures of everything the dog dug up, which was a lot, and sent them to my friend. But I have no idea what he ate and what it dug up. And for all I know, whatever he ate isn't even pictured because the whole section is a mess. This wasn't good enough for her. She wants me to tell her exactly what he ate, and I just don't know and don't want to spend hours trying to figure it out when I don't even know if it can be figured out. Edit 2. My cats are house cats. They don't go in my garden and aren't at risk of getting sick from whatever my gardener is growing. My garden is huge, and what's growing changes often, so no, I don't keep track of what's planted. Update. I blocked my ex-friend after dozens of nasty calls and texts, but I got an update from a mutual friend. The dog is at the dog hospital and he's pretty sick, but is expected to make a full recovery. I managed to contact my gardener eventually. It looks like the dog ate some potatoes or something. A lot was destroyed, so even my gardener isn't 100% sure what was eaten, but he thinks maybe the pesticides were the problem. All info from gardener was passed to my ex-friend. Ex-friend has seen this post and is very angry about it. Everyone say hi to Suzanne. Not the jerk. You asked her nicely not to bring the dog, but yet she did. You asked her to leave, but yet she didn't. She wasn't even watching her dog. If her dog doesn't make it, it's on her. Imagine your sister gets pregnant, lies about who the father is, and demands that you back up her lie. That's exactly what happens in our next story. It just popped up on your screen. Give it a tap, come have a listen. You won't believe what happens next.